2nd of 1 Kings chapter 3 verse 9, the Bible is very clear there that Solomon did not pray for wisdom. Solomon did not pray for wisdom. The Bible says he was the wisest man in the world, but Solomon did not pray for wisdom. Solomon prayed for understanding. The problems we have in Africa is not a lack of wisdom. Some of the wisest men I've met in my years are Africans. Our problem in Africa is understanding. We do not understand our problems. The Ethiopian eunuch in chapter number 8 of the book of Acts, a phenomenal man. He was the treasurer of Ethiopia, which was the kingdom of Africa. He served Candace the queen. The Bible says he was reading, but he could not understand what he was reading. His problem was not an inability to read. His problem was not illiteracy. His problem was he lacked understanding, which brings to note that when Jesus says to his disciples in chapter number 16 of Luke, he says, make friends of unrighteous mammon, that when you fail, they may receive you into their habitations. The word make friends there connotes become acquainted with their world. Have an understanding of their world. If you don't have an understanding of a world, you will have incompetence in that world. You will be an agency that lacks the ability to perform well. If you understand a thing, you will be elevated. Jesus said in chapter number 2 of the book of Revelation to the first church, the church of Ephesus, he said, I have aught against you because you have lost your first love. That word first love had nothing to do with their affection. These people loved God. They gave themselves in lions' dens. They were sawn asunder. They were persecuted, and yet they served the Lord. So when he says you have lost your first love, it was not their affection or their appreciation or their love for God that they lost. Their first love was Matthew 13 verse 11, understanding. Unto you is given to understand the mysteries of the kingdom. And the time they lost their ability to understand, something else took the place of understanding their world. Dr. Roberts said something out of St. Louis. He said, he owns hotels. He said, in the United States of America, there are 55,000 hotels. And of the 55,000 hotels, he said, 20% of the 55,000 hotels in the USA are owned by Indian Asians who 20 years ago were living in poverty in India, came across with less than $100 in their pocket on an economy class ticket, and today they own 20% of the hotels. African Americans who principally have been in this country for 500 years only own 155 hotels. What is the difference? It's a lack of understanding. Let me build my case. There are 7 levels of revenue. The first one is wisdom. Wisdom is revenue. He says if you will have wisdom, you don't need money. The second level of revenue is vision. Without a vision, the people perish. The third level of revenue is information and its application. Information. The fourth level of revenue, relationships. Relationships. Everybody say relationships. You need relationships so that God can work through divine hookups. Every time you've ever been promoted in your life, it's mostly been because of an added relationship. The word relationship comes from 2 words, relate and ship. Ship is a cargo carrier. How do you relate to the cargo you have been introduced to? Relationships. The next one is property, land. property owner. All the women say, I